So most people are saying, what can AI do for me? Whereas the people who build leverage are saying, what can I do with AI? And that's the difference between having AI tell you what to do and you gathering up information and using AI to discover what that means and how to execute a plan. Okay, so everybody's talking about AI replacing humans like it's a foregone conclusion. And in my opinion, most people are reacting to the fantasy instead of asking questions on whether or not that's actually realistic. And to be fair, when a topic is technical and has as much noise as AI does, it could be very hard for the average person to have an understanding of what the hell is going on. But as you all know, as men, it's very important for us to understand that fantasy is our biggest enemy, while clarity is going to be our sharpest weapon. So today, I'm going to make an attempt to talk about AI and answer the question of whether or not AI will replace jobs, but do so in a way to where we can understand how to think about it, as well as how to build leverage given the environment that we're in. So the very first thing I want to attack before we dive into this conversation is the fact that AI, artificial intelligence, that is a marketing term. When people use the term AI, they're largely referring to large language models that predict, generate, and assist. They're not talking about true human intelligence. It's important that we understand that AI is going to be sophisticated math, and human intelligence is something that we have relative to little understanding of. So with that being said, can AI replace human workers? And the direct answer to that is yes, in some cases. Now I'm sure you're saying like, okay, Jez, I've heard that everywhere. Like, why am I even watching this video? Slow down. Again, I've said that. The goal here is for us to think about what that means, right? And to do that, we have to really look at the barriers we're facing. The very first and primary barrier is going to be reliability. Check it out.
This week, Dwarkesh Patel published a podcast with one of the most influential researchers in AI, Andre Karpathy, a Canadian scientist, by the way, who shared a very sobering assessment of the industry's progress, including AI agents. He was very vocal about how agents produced very brittle and unpredictable results, and how they lack basic reliability, how they don't possess reasoning, and how they don't learn unless you go and train them by hand. Modern agents are good at basic, repetitive, monotonous tasks, but they're nowhere close to autonomous operations. They don't have cognitive abilities, they don't learn and reflect on past experiences. Everything they do needs to be checked, validated, and refined.
We all kind of already know that AI could be useful. We have an understanding that it will struggle with consistency and judgment, and it hallucinates. But when you think about how that relates to a business and having this tool replace actual people, well, a business is going to need reliability, dependability. A business thrives on being able to complete consistent actions over time. And currently, AI just cannot be trusted to do that. Now, a lot of people will bring up the argument. It was like, yeah, it can't do it now, but the more we compute, the more we scale, things will change. But it turns out that there is a debate about what scaling can and cannot do. Roll the footage.
Question number one, do you think that the whole idea of scaling, more data, more compute power, is kind of reaching an asymptote? And so this may not be the way that future breakthroughs will be found?
I think we're already moving away from scaling. People don't want to admit that because they make a lot of money selling the scaling hype. But the reality is that most of the progress in the last couple of years has actually been from other stuff. People kind of slough it off. They call it the harness. But that harness is really symbolic AI. They're starting to use classical AI like loops and conditionals, Python interpreters, and all this kind of stuff. So there was this hypothesis that literally all you needed was scaling. And if you had enough scaling, you would get AGI. And everybody's now realizing, even though they're not saying it out loud, that that's not actually working. And so they're using all kinds of gadgets outside the LLMs that are not reliable in order to kind of rescue the mission.
So that would be a no.
That's a no.
Perfect.
So outside of the language learning, i.e. feeding the system data. They're using other sophisticated tools to deliver what we know as today as AI. That brings us to the second issue that we have. You see, AI is not like software. AI depends on hard infrastructure. And when we look at the infrastructure, that opens the door to the next two problems. The first thing is infrastructure requires energy, it requires money, build out, and the most important thing is going to be time. Couple that with the money aspect of it, companies are currently investing billions, if not trillions, into AI. Now, how does this become a problem? Okay, again, stay with me. We're saying that reliability is an issue when it comes to AI being able to replace humans, right? Some people say scaling won't advance AI. The industry is saying scaling will. In order to scale, we need to compute. In order to compute, we need data centers, which requires hard infrastructure. Now what we're talking about is the financing portion of that. Companies are investing billions, if not trillions of dollars into AI. The primary issue with this is no one currently knows what the return on investment is. So data centers take time to build, up to 2 years. Currently, companies are investing billions into it, but no one knows what the return on investment is. So even if compute can act as a solution to the reliability issue, when you look at that equation, time, money, uncertainty, it's reasonable to say something's gonna give because companies have to justify where they're spending all this money on. That tells us where the leverage is, because if we can assume that AI is going to get better at what it can do today, but it will never get to the level that it replaces humans, what that tells us is we need to have an understanding of what AI can and can't do and build leverage from there. That could be teaching people how to maximize AI within their roles. That could be maximizing your AI usage within your role, understanding what it can and can't do. Makes a lot of sense, right? Putting yourself in a position to maybe consult with companies about what AI can and can't do. This idea of going in and installing autonomous agents for companies, I'm not really buying that, because we just said that you have to constantly check the AI, it has to constantly be reviewed by humans, and there's always going to be errors. And see, it's important for us to understand this stuff, because those of us who are business owners, now we can think twice before we pay someone to come in and set something up that is guaranteed to break. You see why it's so important to have clarity on what's going on in the world? All of these different advertisement schools are saying, hey, come learn how to build agents, pay money, come take this 7-day course. You don't need all of that. Because the truth of the matter is everyone has AI. And what's happening is we all have access to the same information. So now what's going to become more valuable is how you think. Because most people are allowing AI to think for them, but the people who build leverage in this day and age are going to be the ones who use AI as a thinking partner. So most people are saying, what can AI do for me? Whereas the people who build leverage are saying, what can I do with AI? So the basic argument is AI isn't reliable. There's debate on whether or not compute will make it more reliable, which it'll make it more reliable, but reliability is always going to be an issue. We'll never reach general intelligence. But the business community is saying that scaling will work. But even with that, the economics don't hold up, because again, time, money, no clear return on investment. So at some point, someone's gonna call chicken or play chicken. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this empowers you on how to think about building leverage in your life, how to think about what you advise friends and family, kids. And unless there's some groundbreaking technology, I don't see AI turning into general intelligence. What I can say is this. When we look at the basic tasks, those are going to be the things that are in jeopardy, things that are easily replaceable, but your leverage is going to be in your ability to think with AI. And that's the difference between having AI tell you what to do and you gathering up information and using AI to discover what that means and how to execute a plan. But anyway, let me know what y'all think. Please like, comment, subscribe. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here.